Hey crew, welcome back to another episode of Women in Telemark Skiing series here on the Skippy Report. In this episode, I have a conversation with Marion Abrams from Pittsfield, Vermont. She's a longtime telemark skier. She prefers to ski in leather boots and straight skis. And this episode is about persistence and passion and finishing something that started 25 years ago but got put on hold because of an accident. It's also about her career as a filmmaker, going to school for that, working for ESPN and Killington Resort. We sidebar into audio stuff also because she's a filmmaker. And technology did let us down, and she eloquently, during the podcast, said what I should do, so I just left it. So she's saying what happened. Anyway, so enjoy the podcast and the interview with Marion Abrams. Put your feet up, or if you're driving down the road, make sure you stay awake. Enjoy the podcast.
Howdy.
Hello, Marion. Welcome to the Skippy Report.
Hey, let me see if I got everything set up right. Are you hearing me on the mic?
Yes, I hear you clearly.
Awesome.
Yep.
Awesome.
This is kind of
Great
cool.
to meet you.
Oh, yeah, same here. Sorry I was tardy. I was reading a story to my grandchildren through FaceTime.
Oh, that's the best. How old are they?
2 and 3.
Oh, man. What do you read to them?
I was reading, we read everything. I was reading, I don't know, it's some Carl Goes Shopping. It's about a Rottweiler and a little baby that it's just a picture book.
We had that book, one of the little board books.
Yes. Yeah. And then Lola, she's the oldest. She wanted to read. She sat in this chair. She had to stuff herself in. And she was reading Hop on Pops because that's what the kids call me. They call me Pops.
Excellent. The classic.
Yeah.
The classic.
So we're getting them stoked because we're getting to go ski with them on Saturday.
Amazing. So do they have little skis?
They do. They have itty-bitty skis and the smallest ski boots you could find.
I did not do that for my kids that young. Not 1 and 2.
Well, my daughter was the one who was all excited. When they came last year, we got our granddaughter on skis, and she wasn't too keen on it, but that was okay. Then this year, she's more keen, and she loves it.
That's
so
awesome.
She wants to get off the little baby hill and go to the bigger chair, she says.
I remember a lot of wait for the sunny day, a lot of hot chocolate.
Yes. Well, my grandson, Avery, loves the pea soup I make. So I said, I'm bringing pea soup. And Lola goes, Lola not like pea soup. Gigi, make me pasta. So we bring her some pasta. So we meet in the middle of where we live. My daughter lives in Windsor, which is south of Detroit. So we meet in the middle at a place called Bowler Mountain. And a friend of mine filled me in on it. I guess it was a wrecking yard dump. So he says, yeah, it's a mountain built on a bunch of old crushed up cars.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
It's a good use for the old dump. Right?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. So tell us who you are.
Yeah. So I don't know. Are we just getting to know each other or are we rolling now?
We can roll and get to know each other because the people who listen kind of like the organic vibe about this.
Yeah.
So
I listened to a couple of your episodes.
Okay.
I just, you reached out to me and I'm happy to do it, but I kind of listened to a couple episodes and I'm like, does he really want me on this show?
Yeah, because you know what? This series is Women in Telemark Skiing.
Yeah.
And it's all about the love of telemark skiing.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, I have been working so hard to get my wife on the show with me, but she refuses to.
Well, maybe after I'm on, she'll come on because I'm not like a pro racer or
you don't
or any of that, right?
No.
Yeah. So, but I think there's probably a good story you'll enjoy.
Well, yeah, that's right. Yeah. So this is Marion Abrams, everybody, and she's in Vermont.
Yep.
I don't know where in Vermont. I'm going to hypothesize around Rutland.
Well, yes, because you know Carrie, which is how we got connected. So Killington was the home mountain for a long time.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So tell us who you are, how you got into skiing.
Yeah. So I'm going to start at the beginning, but I don't really know how far to go back. But I'll tell you the story. Basically, I like everybody else on your show. Probably, I started skiing as a kid.
Yep.
I started skiing alpine at Killington. In the little racer program and all that. And then I went away from it for years, just because the family stopped skiing. I was a kid. We changed what we were doing, and I was in college and went skiing with a couple friends. And in my head, I remembered, like you probably know this, your context for what's a good skier
Yes.
is like very different. And so people who ski like once a year will tell you like, oh my God, I'm a great skier. I ski once a year. I'm really good, And in my head, I'm used to skiing with like future Olympians, whatever. So I'm like, I'm not that good. We'll have fun. You get on the mountain and then you're like, oh, I guess my idea of what's good and your idea of what's good are not the same.
Right.
And I kind of felt as an adult like I got this gift.
Right.
Like as a kid, I didn't always love it. It was cold. I had to pee. I wanted to go in and have French fries, right? But I got this gift, which was I was a solid skier. It was like something I had that my parents gave me that I never could, it could never be taken away. And so I kind of fell back in love with it. And I started working. I'm in the film business, or I was in the film business in New York City, and I decided I needed to get out of New York City. I worked on a frontline show about fatal child abuse, and it was like, I said, you know what? I'm done with the city. So I bought a guidebook to ski areas in the U.S., and I wrote letters to like 30 of them. And I said, do you have any jobs that involve skiing and video cameras? And so, are you still there? You can always just make a little bridge in there and say, we had an audio problem and here's where we picked it up, right? Yes. So anyway, I was working on this show about fatal child abuse in New York City and decided I needed to leave the city. So I bought a guidebook to ski areas and I started writing letters to ski areas and said, do you have any jobs that involve skiing and video? And I got a job sight unseen at Snowmass and started working for the ski school, videotaping their ski lessons.
That's cool.
And I loved it. And from there, I ended up working back at Killington Mountain, my home mountain, at their TV station. And there's a long story around that and the persistence and sleeping in my car and all that stuff. But I got that job at Killington. And so at that time, I was skiing a lot for work because I was a skiing camera person.
Right.
And so I started then, I think my mom bought me a pair of those like plastic fish scale cross-country skis.
Yep.
And I lived in this little town called Pittsfield, Vermont. It was on the edge of the national forest. And so totally self-taught, I started cross-country skiing in the national forest, on the snowmobile trails, and just hacking around. And so a couple years into that, I met some people who were telemark skiers. And they talked me into trying it, and I tried it. It was a great alternative because I was alpine skiing for work, so I got to telemark ski for fun. And I was getting excited about it. I decided I really wanted to learn the whole thing. So I had signed up for this workshop in the White Mountains. It was like an intro to backcountry.
Okay.
And so I was super excited. I ordered a pair of skins for my skis, which like this is pre-YouTube.
Yes.
So I was like the idea, this is one of these things that's so funny. Like the idea of putting skins on your skis seemed like super mysterious and hard. It's like, no, you just stick them on the bottom and you peel them off. But when you don't have a YouTube video and you've never seen it, you're like, what are these things? How do I do this? So I'd ordered this stuff. I had it all. I was super excited and ready. And I went to a shoot in Canada. I was shooting snowcross in Valcourt. And snowcross, for people who don't know, it's like motocross with snowmobiles, right?
That's right.
I was shooting snowcross for an ESPN show. Last lap, last race, snowmobile comes flying off the track, takes out my scaffolding, sent me to the hospital in an ambulance, shattered wrist, cracked ribs, the whole thing.
Wow.
And so I never took that class. I never took the workshop. Next year I had a kid. A couple years later I had another kid. My kids grew up. It's 20 years later. I'm actually taking a backcountry workshop in Mount Washington in a couple of weeks.
Oh, are you?
20 years later.
Wow.
But last year, I finally got skins. I actually got my grown son to help me get them all set up with the help of YouTube, and started uphilling locally again. Not that I haven't been skiing in between, but
Yes.
the whole like uphill skiing, backcountry thing is, 20 years later, I'm finally getting to go out there.
Wow. Yeah, that, you know what? That's the same background that I have coming into Telemark. I grew up just outside of Montreal. We didn't have a car when I was a kid because my parents didn't have the money. And, we started off snowshoeing is an inexpensive way to get the family busy in the wintertime. And then we migrated to cross-country skiing, and we moved from Quebec to central South Ontario, just outside of Toronto. And I was like, Dad, you made a mistake. There's no snow here. And nobody had heard of cross-country skiing back in 1977 in Ontario. So I'm out field skiing, setting my own tracks, going into the conservation areas. I was 16 years old, just cross-country skiing by myself. And then, I kind of dabbled with, I saw Telemark turns, and I was like, it must be the same gear, but no, surely not. And definitely...
Do you remember the first time you tried to cross-country ski in tracks after that? Because that was...
Well, you know what? I have never really skied at a place that's been groomed. There's a great place northeast of us in the hills, and I don't know what they do now, but when I used to ski it there all the time, we always set our own tracks. And today we got slammed with snow, which was great. So I would have finished work, called my buddy, and said, okay, let's go set some tracks. And that, it was crazy because we'd go out there, it'd take us 2.5 hours, and we'd go back the next day, and it'd take us like 45 minutes.
So my husband used to work for a local cross-country ski area, and he used to drive the snowmobile,
yes,
or the groomer with the that set the tracks at the ski area. And for years, I was like, why would you even, I don't even know how to ski though.
Right.
I'm going to show you this. I think you'll appreciate this. This is what I ski in.
Oh, right on. I have a pair of leather ski boots too. So just so you know, this is an audio YouTube.
No, that's just for you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you know what? Once I got skiing in plastic stuff, and I was like, you know what? I really need to get some leather gear and straight skis. So I still ski on leather skis. And
do you really? That's great. I thought so. I feel like the reason I got into Telly, one of the reasons was it was just my feet. The ski boots bothered my feet.
Okay.
And so I got the leather boots. And so now it's just kind of pure stubbornness and maybe a little bit of showing off. I just like to ski in the leather boots, and I still have my heli stinks.
Oh, yes. I have heli stinks also.
You probably don't use them anymore, right?
I haven't used them lately, but the bindings are sitting on there ready for them to rock and roll. Because I've gone back. I have Carhu Super Comps.
Yep.
Yeah, with
so that's the age when I started, like when the super comps and the heli stinks. That was the time when I started Telemark Skiing.
Right. I used to instruct. Well, I still I volunteer instruct when I go to festivals and that sort of stuff. I help out the newbies, and I was teaching at a local hill in Toronto, and there was this guy who was out on modern equipment on part of our fleet, and he said, yeah, I like it, but I'm going to come back for another lesson with you. Can I bring my leather boots? And I was like, oh, can I bring mine?
Yes.
And I had a lesson before he showed up. So the patrollers let me stow my gear in their place. I got off the hill, switched everything out, and then going down the hill promptly fell 3 times during the lesson because it's like, right, you can't carve these things. You have to smoosh and massage the turn, right?
Yes, and like when you start, now I've been doing it enough on our little local mountain that I like to carve some alpine turns on my tele skis with my leather boots.
Oh.
And it's a pretty fun feeling, just making those little mini arcs. You feel like, on top of the world.
I love skiing my leather boots because I've learned that you stay in the fall line and you're all good. It's once you start trying to carve those big turns, it doesn't work. I remember a buddy of mine showing up at the local hill, and he was standing at the bottom, and he told me he was there. And then I came down, and I skied up to him, and he's like, Oh, that's you? I was wondering who the hell that was. You were skiing really weird.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, sometimes it's easier in the steeps to
It-
just get the skis around and everything.
Yeah, I had learned that, as a new person to Telemark, you gnash your thighs because you're doing these turns, you're going too deep. At the end of the day, the kids at school, they always knew at the beginning of the season because I would go down the stairs backwards.
Yes.
Because that way your quads
Yes.
don't shake when you take the step down. And they're like,
Yes.
oh, yeah, you were skiing this weekend. And
Exactly.
yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. So it's crazy. Anyway, so the Mad Motion part.
Yeah.
Yeah. What is this? That's obviously your filmmaking stuff.
Yeah, so I've been Mad Motion for 25, 30 years since I came to Vermont and I started working at Killington as a skiing camera person. I kind of feel like I was 20, 30 years ahead of my time because I wish I was getting into it now. I'd have a YouTube channel and the whole
Right.
thing, right? But now I'm just having a great time with it. It's not really my business anymore. I have a full-time job as a director of content for a hospital network. So I still get to teach other people and work with video and stuff. But Mad Motion is my love. And so you've seen my Instagram stuff, lots
Yes.
of outdoors and skiing, and starting some stuff on YouTube too, which is a great exercise as a grown person to just put yourself out there, right? It really teaches you a lot about yourself and humility. And my new tagline is embarrassment is just a feeling.
Yeah. And you know what? I'm 6'6", 285 pounds, and it's like, yeah, whatever. I look like an ass doing certain things. My sport is basketball.
Yeah.
And
Telemark.
Yes, and Telemark. And but other than that, like I was a phys ed teacher and I would teach dance. And when people they're like, "You used to teach dance?" I was like, "Yeah, like why wouldn't I? It's part of the curriculum." And they said, "Well, what would you teach?" And I said, "Oh, I'd start off with square dancing because the kids could get into that, and then we'd move to things like the cha-cha-cha and the salsa and the waltz." And they're like, "You taught all that?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I had a colleague, because I would get new content off of YouTube Academy, and I'd go over, we had adjoining doors, and I'd knock on the door early in the morning. I was like, "Lena, I got some new moves. I got to practice." Okay. So there we are listening to the music and we're practicing the moves. And then she moved on to a different school. I was like, oh man, I miss my dancing partner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. And probably the lesson you taught the kids about being willing to do it, whether you did it quite right or not, was as good as a lesson as teaching them how to dance, right?
Yeah. And you know what? I would always thank the young ladies for doing this.
Yeah.
I would tell the young men that they should be thankful because this might be the closest that they get to a young woman for a while. Some of my colleagues were like, "How the hell did you keep your job for 30 years?"
Yeah. Times have changed.
Yeah. And then I would tell the kids, I said, "You know what? Up here in Ontario, when we're grading kids, we use levels, they're rubrics. And, level 3 is meeting the expectations." And I said, "You know what? If I see you out there doing stuff, I guarantee you're going to get a level 3. Because, dance is a small part of the curriculum when it gets mashed in with everything else, that sort of stuff." And then I had young ladies who were dance students, and they would help out. And, they would exceed expectations. So I rarely got usually a boy who did not want to participate, but I usually had 100% participation.
And you know what? I'm going to bring it back to telemarketing because it's probably a similar message, right? I give anybody a level 3 who gets out there and does it.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. Yeah. How good you are if you're out there doing it.
Yeah. I think it's kind of cool that you're working for a hospital network.
Yeah.
So do you do professional videos or like?
Yeah. So my work has been video all my life, and
but I mean, sort of like professional development for the staff,
gotcha.
or is it?
Gotcha. So my role as director of content is I oversee the social media team, basically the team that writes the blogs, that writes the email newsletters, we do some YouTube content, we do some website stuff. So it's more that stuff
Okay.
that we're building up. Yeah.
Okay. So it's more towards marketing, I guess.
Yeah, I would say marketing communications.
Okay.
I mean, it's really, you know, I don't know how much you want to get into it, but basically we think about answering questions and solving problems for our community and patients, right?
Oh.
So factually reliable medical information, but answering the questions that are on people's minds. So we'll actually go out there and kind of do some research to say what are trending topics, or, you know, things the wellness gurus are talking about, and can we bring a really like reliable, trustworthy medical perspective to some of those topics.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I hope my
cool.
friend Justin is listening to this, because he's a cameraman, videographer for a news station. He's a Telemark skier. He's like, oh, I don't know if you want me on the show. I was like, dude, man, you're recording history.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
So yeah. So I hope, Justin, you're listening to this, and this solidifies your decision to get on the show with me.
Get on the show, Justin.
So, have you been out west just recently?
I have been. So here's like the other part of this Telemark story that I really love is that a couple years ago, my husband is not really able to ski anymore, and my son decided to try on his tele boots, which are also, you know, 20 years old.
Right.
And his tele skis. And my son, who's now 21, started skiing in his dad's stuff. And our other son, who's now 19, decided he wanted to do it too. So not only are both of our sons skiing tele, but they're both skiing tele with used 20-year-old equipment.
Right.
So kind of part of our family lore is that my husband many years ago worked at Snowbird doing avi control.
Oh, cool.
And we're talking in the 70s.
Yeah.
And so I haven't skied out west in probably 20 years. My kids had never skied out west, but they've skied their whole lives. So we finally took a trip out there this year, and we went to Snowbird and we went to Alta and just had a great time ripping up the mountain. But we did take alpine skis because we felt like with the leather boots and the 20-year-old gear, we might have a little more fun on alpine.
Yeah, it's your safe zone, and you'll be able to explore more areas.
Yeah. Although at least they were a little bit bummed. Once we got there, they were like, oh, I don't remember how to alpine anymore. Tell me better. Yeah.
Well, you have to tell them that, you know what, just because you're on Telemark stuff doesn't mean you can't alpine. Up until my wife getting on her NTN stuff, she would probably spend more than half her day doing alpine turns.
Really?
Yeah.
So what do you think about the those new super modern, the bindings that are like alpine touring, alpine, and Telemark all in one? Have you seen those?
No. I have not. I don't know. The only thing I can think of is maybe you're thinking of the Bishop binding.
Maybe. So do you know the Fay brothers?
Yes.
Telemark down?
Yes.
Yeah. So we got my son's used boots from them.
Okay.
He got a pair of like brand new but 20-year-old boots.
Yep.
At the attic there. And there was a binding, I don't even remember what it was called, but it is like it's can switch to all of the above. It can be a tele binding.
Oh wow.
An alpine touring, and you can lock your heel down. And,
really?
Yeah. So I'm very curious about that.
I've probably seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've probably seen it. Yeah, I don't know. I got on telly, I don't know how long ago, and I've never put an alpine boot on my foot again.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
good for you.
The new boots, I can see the new boots and the bindings, the NTN bindings and that sort of stuff. The easy convertibility or switchability for people. If you're a strong alpine skier, it's a lot easier to switch over to Telemark.
I have such mixed feelings, because I really love skiing in the leather boots.
Yeah.
And I really love just the way it feels, right? Skiing down the mountain. But I do know that, like, if I go somewhere really tough,
Yeah.
I won't be able to keep up with the people on the modern equipment. So
Right.
I'm very torn between, whether I need to update my gear or stick with what I love.
Yeah.
Because if I'm measuring by, like, if I'm skiing on my own or even like with just friends, I guarantee I'm having as much fun or more
Yes.
than the people on the newer stuff. But there is that little voice that's like, well, what if I want to go somewhere that...
You know what? I would never think of taking my big plastic stuff, my modern stuff, to go bushwhacking. I have friends who bushwhack all the time, much more than I do. And, they've got cross-country skis and they take a Dremel tool, or they've got really old Telemark skis and they take a Dremel tool and they put their own fish scales in the bottom of the old skis.
That's
and
great. That's great.
They're, we ski power line cuts and
Yep.
all that sort of stuff, right? So...
Yeah. And it doesn't matter if you look good because you're not doing it for a movie. You're just out there having a great time.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So what sorts of things did you do for ESPN when you were talking about snowcross?
Well, that's what I was doing. So it was when I still worked. I think I worked in Killington, and we were shooting a lot of ski content. So we used to shoot some what we called same-day TV commercials for the Vermont Ski Areas Association, multicam shoots for ESPN, mostly skiing, but sometimes snowcross, little bit of race car stuff, a little bit of snowboard, mountain biking, that kind of thing. And then a little side journey in, I think, around 2007, 2005, somewhere in there. Have you ever heard of Spartan Race?
Yes.
So the guy who started Spartan Race moved in. I lived in a town of 500 people in Vermont. And this guy who started Spartan Race moved in a quarter mile from my house. And I was an outdoor camera person. And he was putting on races. And he hadn't started Spartan yet. And we became friends. And I started shooting stuff for him. And we actually started a podcast in 2007. We started working together 2007. 2015, we started a podcast. So I actually ran his podcast for Spartan for about 8 years until COVID hit. And then everything got kind of turned upside down. And that's when I moved into the job I have now at the hospital.
Wow. We didn't talk about your education. I'm going to hypothesize that communications and that sort of stuff was your education?
Yep.
Film. All right.
Yep.
Very
so
cool.
What I liked, it's very similar to Telemark, right? It's like everything that we have now for equipment didn't even exist.
Yeah.
In those days, right?
Yes. Well, I'm also a carpenter, and
yep.
I'm helping a friend with this project. When I retired in 2018, he said, "I got a job for you."
I might be reaching out for some advice.
Advice is free. I don't want to work for people now, so I charge almost as much as a lawyer does to work, and nobody hires me, and it's so good. However, I still am on this job because Ernie's my best friend, but I keep telling him, I said, this house is 150 years old. And there's probably lots of them around Vermont on the old farms and stuff, and it's built just like a barn. I said, could you imagine the old time carpenters if they just showed up and saw what the tools we had? Everything is like cordless.
Yes,
it's nuts. Yeah. Like, I worked with a friend, ski instructing, and his company built Steadicams.
Yep.
And I'm going to hypothesize with all the little handheld gyroscopes. I see people on college football sidelines with just little tiny cameras now. They're not these big, huge things that the Steadicam would have, right?
Well, if you look, you mentioned my Mad Motion Instagram. I think the last post I did was, and you can see the Betacam that was like 40 pounds. And then in order to play back the clip, you had to have the field monitor, which was like a mini TV, and then a field deck. And then we had the word field in them. So they were like the portable, super portable ones.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Did you ever try out a Steadicam?
No.
So I got to try one on one day, and it's like it's like a...
Yeah, it's a big, huge harness.
You're like Tron or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. and it almost knocks you right over.
Really?
It puts the gyro like all the way to the
Oh,
camera is
wow.
pulling you over. Yeah.
That's
It's
nuts.
pretty cool.
He was telling
So
me
yeah,
it was
you don't need that now.
no, I think it was 2012. He was working on the Steadicam to go on a Segway
Yep.
for the
Yep.
Olympics in London. That's
Cool.
yeah, so that the Steadicam was like mounted right on it, and then the operator just had to drive the Segway.
Yep.
Wow,
Yep.
that's cool. I love technology. I love like film stuff, and I used to dabble with a little bit of it at school, being a shop
Well, I was
teacher.
going to ask you, how did you start doing this podcast? What got that going for you?
I would have conversations with a very good friend of mine, and I said, these are great topics, and then I would branch out and I'd have other interesting conversations like we're having right now. And I was like, oh, this is really cool. I should have a podcast. And so then my wife called me on it. And for Christmas 2021, she did her research. She went to Longham and Quaid, which is a musical store, I guess. And so she went in and the guy says, well, yeah, you did your research. You know what you're talking about. And then so he says, this is the equipment. And she's like, whoa, that's really expensive. He said, well, why don't you do what musicians do? Rent it. And then if your husband likes doing it, 50% of the rental fee will go towards the purchase of it. So I have a couple of studio speakers here because I like listening to stuff outside of headphones.
Yeah.
And when I first did it, the room I'm in is a small bedroom in the basement I built, and it was like, the acoustics in here are really good. This is going to be the Skippy studio.
Very nice.
And then I use I think a first generation Rodecaster. It says it's a Class A servo biased preamp, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then I've branched out. I got a big Pelican case that I can put everything in that I need, and then I started interviewing some more than 2 people live at the cottage in Newport, Vermont. I was like, oh, I need some extra mics. So I got some lav mics.
Yep.
And so I just plugged them into so I've got mics that work on my phone, lav mics that work on the phone, lav mics that work on the preamp. And then I have a set of these big mics also. So
These sound much better when you can use them. Have you tried out Riverside?
yes. So Sean keeps telling me, you need to go onto YouTube. And I was like, oh, yeah, but you know what? That means I have to increase the cost of my host now. And then I have to pay for Riverside. That's like $700. I can get a decent pair of skis for that, man.
That is absolutely fair. So the reason I like Riverside, now we're like nerding out and I sound like an ad.
No, that's
Not
cool.
even for the
That's cool.
video.
That's cool. Because Corey Snyder and he's got a PhD in biomechanics, and he and my phys ed degree in his biomechanics shared similar textbooks. So yeah, we can nerd out.
So the reason I like Riverside isn't even because you can add video, but because what it does is it records each person locally.
Yes.
And then uploads the file.
Okay.
So right now with Zoom, if the internet gets funky.
Yeah, it did it a minute ago.
Right. Then that messes up the recording.
Okay.
But with Riverside, it's recording it locally and then uploading it.
Okay.
So even if our internet gets bad,
yes,
the actual recorded file stays clean.
Okay.
The other thing that you might be doing with your local recording is it keeps all the tracks separate.
Yeah.
So that makes it much easier for editing.
Yes.
So that's the reason. And I think the Riverside isn't that much. And then you could even do that if you didn't do video. But if you did do video, you don't really need to add it to your hosting. You just drop it right on YouTube and it doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah.
But you got to edit it. And that's a whole other deal you probably don't want to deal with.
Yeah, I know. Because my friend Adam Sauerwin, who does the Pursuit podcast on the Out of Collective network, he got into doing the video stuff, and I was asking him questions, and he's like, oh yeah, that's a whole lot of work, man.
So tell me I'm starting to see stuff pop up on Instagram and whatever. What is the Out of Collective?
Adam Jabber. I don't know a whole lot about him, but I first listened to the podcast when Adam Sauer went in. So he's Mr. Adam X on Instagram, and he lives in Hamburg, New York. But he had a a bus. He was done with corporate world and shoved it, and had a small schoolie bus that he painted black, and he was skiing all over New England, I guess, mostly Vermont, I think. And it's called The Pursuit. It's the pursuit of anything. And
All
his,
right,
I can't
look it up.
Yeah, and he and CJ Kosha, who started Telemark Colorado, which is Telecolo now.
Yep,
They've started the Pretty Good Telemark show, and that comes out every third Wednesday of every month. So this is kind of good. I'm giving a shout out because Adam was mentioning me in his yesterday's podcast about what I'm doing, the deep dive into women in telemark skiing.
Well, it's been very fun. So for a while, all my content on Instagram and stuff was really about content creation, right? Because that was like my work. And in the last year, I decided, no, I'm doing this for fun. So in the last year, all my content has moved to be hiking, backpacking, skiing, telemark skiing. And so it's been really fun. Now I'm getting served up more and more of that stuff and getting to see, you know, the tele podcasts and the tele Instagram feeds. And now all the platforms have figured me out, and they're starting to feed me all that stuff.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I know maybe we can hook up. I'm coming down to teach Carrie how to telemark in March.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely. Are you going to Killington or Pico with her?
Either one. My wife's coming down.
Yeah.
And
I will absolutely come meet you guys.
Oh, right on. Because Carrie, do you know Christine Keeney?
I've got this like Monday through Friday job. So it's got to be a weekend. And I know those of us that really love to do this don't like to ski on the weekends.
Yeah. Our pass at our local mountain at the cottage, which is basically the only place we ski right now, other than this big road trip we're doing. We only ski Monday to Friday, and it's like we have this whole mountain. It's like a private club, I guess, like the Yellowstone Club in Idaho. I don't know if you follow Christine Keeney or have heard of Christine Keeney. Knee Dipping Ginger. She's on Instagram.
Okay. I'll check her out.
I just uploaded her podcast this week.
Great. I'll give it a listen.
She's
Is she coming too?
Yeah, I think so. Because Carrie painted a picture of Superstar with Christine standing at the top of the mountain. So I want to get a print of it, and I want both of them to sign it for me.
That's awesome. Yeah. So do definitely let me know. Maybe I could get a day off if I plan ahead.
I used to tell the kids who skied at school, I said, just call me Dr. Powder. I have a prescription pad from Dr. Powder that I could write you a day off to go skiing.
For most of my life until I had this job, my schedule, unless I had a shoot, my schedule was my own because I was mostly editing.
Right.
So if it was a beautiful day, I could go out and ski, and then I could edit at night or whatever. But now I've got this grown-up job for the first time in my life. It's terrible.
Yeah, well, you got to pay the bills, right? And you got to do what you got to do to pay the bills.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. So no, this has been awesome. Are you doing anything in the future? I always ask Telemark. You know what? I want to say I am so stoked that you're doing that backcountry workshop at Mount Washington, because when I interviewed Patrick Hummel, who's the chief supervisor at White Mountain State Park, I didn't know there was a state park on top of a national forest. And he asked me, he goes, do you know the connection between like backcountry skiing and Mount Washington? And I was like, somewhat. And so he delved into that for a little bit. So so
I should throw a shout out to Inclusive Ski Touring.
Okay.
So that's the group. It turns out it was just fate. A woman that I work with, her daughter is one of the guys with Inclusive Ski Touring, and she mentioned it to me, and I was like, this is what I tried to do 20 years ago. So I am going back up there in February. I'm excited about that. There's a group, some friends of mine started called Golden Age of Adventure.
Oh, cool.
And they have started they're the ones. So last spring, I walked across the Grand Canyon in a day, and that was something they coordinated. So probably going up to Canada in February. They're doing some winter camping stuff. I'll go do that. And, my kids I'm an empty nester this year, so now I'm ready to get back to all this stuff that I love.
I've been an empty nester for like almost 10 years now. I'm 61. So, well, I guess my one daughter, she would come back every once in a while when she was in school and that sort of stuff. But it was still, we still do have a lot of their gear in our house.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I guess I started later. I'm 58, but I've got one finishing college and one starting college.
Yeah, well, when I talk to people who have kids who are like going into school, it's like, yeah, no, I got to still keep working to pay those bills.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
No, okay, so where exactly is the course, your backcountry course, taking place?
It is at Mount Washington. It starts at the Joe Dodge Lodge at the bottom of Mount Washington in Pinkham Notch, and it is run by Inclusive Ski Touring.
Okay, very cool. And your winter camping, whereabouts?
And the winter camping, it is, oh my gosh, Lake Kashagawigamog? Is that right?
You know what?
Am I saying that right?
Are you like going way up by Wawa?
Yeah. Oh, I don't even know. I just know it. So it's terrible.
Because there's a big provincial park up there that kind of sounds like that name. And I was like, holy shit, that's way up there, man.
It's kind of up there. They told me it's a long drive. I've been there once. I went up there once when I was shooting canoeing. It's it's Halliburton.
Lots of people say Northern Ontario, which is north of Highway 7, when Highway 7 is like 30 miles north of me, maybe. And my wife is from Thunder Bay. We used to work I worked in a logging camp in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, way up there.
This place is on the way to. I did do a shoot once. I think it was Keewaydin summer camp.
Yes.
They do these canoe trips.
Yes.
They are way up north. And I got to go spend 5 days in a canoe with a bunch of the camp kids up there in the lakes. No cell service. You dip your water bottle in the lake to get your water. And it was amazing. Amazing experience. That was up there.
Yeah.
That was pretty far up there.
I used to paddle Lake Superior.
Yeah.
That was so cool. Saw so many things. Had to navigate. This was when GPS was just coming out, and there were some misunderstandings about how the GPS worked. So I was like, no, man, we're not there. This is where we are. So I out navigated the GPS back then. This was 2001.
Yeah, I don't think it was that good then. Right?
No. So we just relied on our compass and maps, and you know what? We hit everything bang on, and the Coast Guard couldn't believe we were out there in 2 canoes. They're like, you're where?
Temagami, that's where it is.
Yeah. Temagami's up there. That's Northern Ontario.
That's the one. That's where I went on the canoe expedition, which was amazing.
Wow.
I'd love to do that again.
Yeah. And you know what? That's the site of one of our oldest old-growth forests in central Canada.
Just amazing up there.
Yeah. I loved living in Northern Ontario. I lived on Manitoulin Island, and I used to go to work by boat and build cottages for people on islands. It was like I worked in cottage country. It's great. I'd ride my motorcycle to the dock. We'd jump in this 25-foot aluminum boat with a 50 on the back and zoom down the North Channel to work. It was so cool.
You know, I think this is the thing, right? Like, I think with Instagram and with YouTube and all that, I think it's easy to forget that, like, you can love the outdoors and just be kind of doing your thing in your backyard.
Yep.
Right. There's this idea like you got to be hucking off cliffs and you got to be like camera perfect and you got to be at, out west, or you got to be, but like you said, bushwhacking with your plastic skis or your, your old tele skis that you got your Dremel tool on is just as much fun or more fun. And I think it's kind of easy to forget about that if you follow Instagram all day or YouTube. Yeah.
You know what? Like, similar story to that. We'd go up to the forest I was talking about where we'd cross country ski in a snowstorm. And when my children were little, I converted a toboggan, a 6-foot toboggan that kind of looked like a dog sled. And I fashioned a harness like the ski patroller's harness. And I would snowshoe with them or cross-country ski with them. And we'd have our little small stove, and we'd cook hot chocolate out in the middle of the forest, try to get them that way. And then when they were a little older, we'd still huck out there in the van and go snowshoeing in a snowstorm. I remember my kids going, Dad, you're so slow. And I was like, okay, you guys go ahead. And they took like 3 steps because we have, the old school snowshoes with babiche, the raquettes. And they'd go ahead of me and they'd take like 4 steps. And they're like, oh, this is way too hard, Dad. You go. So, yeah, they've always been outdoors and making our own stories well before social media. And I kind of find sometimes young people don't have the stories that we have. I don't know if they live vicariously. They spend an awful lot of time on their phones and not getting out there and getting it.
Even one of my sons was talking about this with me, and he said, in a way, it's like he hears all the stories of people who just figured stuff out, and it's almost like you're not encouraged to do that because you can watch the videos and learn. Like you aren't really encouraged to just get out there and make your own mistakes and figure it out.
Yeah,
just try it and get it wrong.
Well, I was out there with the snowblower today, and then I was like, "What's going on with it?" And I blew a tire, and they're tubeless tires. So I was like, "Oh man!" And my truck was in the shop. All my tools are in the shop. So I said to my neighbor, because I was given this snowblower, and I said, "Okay, I'll get it going. And when I'm away," I said, "you can use it anytime you want." But he always shovels my driveway when I'm away. I said, "You know what? Do your stuff, and if you have time, then you can do mine." Anyway, so he says, "Oh, did you get to use the snowblower?" I was like, "Yeah, I finally got to use the snowblower." Sometimes I find it's faster just to shovel. And so I was like, "Oh, this is a tubeless tire. All my tools are in the truck." So I told him, he goes, "Well, I'll come over." I said, "I just need a ratchet strap and a wrench." So I took the tire off. We put a ratchet strap around it. My compressor's in the truck. So I got my bicycle pump. I'm like,
it's always a way.
Yeah. But it was leaking. I said, okay, I'll just take it in the house and I will deal with it once everything's all got the snow off it. I think the air in the tire just needed to warm up and inflate a little more and create a better seal, because I went back an hour later and went, the tire's still hard.
You fixed it.
Yeah.
You fixed it.
Yeah. I've done that before, but I was like, why is it leaking? But I guess I just needed to bring it in the house and let the air warm up in the tire, and it expanded more, and we're good to go. It didn't cost me anything. I use a ratchet strap and a wrench.
Like a true high school teacher. It's a lesson.
That's right. Yeah. So this has been great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hope so. I hope it was interesting.
Well, you know what? I find that as I go along, and with the more mature telemark skiers, there are all sorts of cool backstories.
Yeah.
And that's what I like to hear, because I think that your film background is really cool. And when we meet in person, we'll probably talk more about that. And
we can nerd out, geek out. We could talk about the little 360-degree camera that's about the size of my phone.
Wow. That's nuts. Yeah, I see people on Instagram and stuff. They got this 360 thing on a pole or something like that. Looks like they're standing just on the planet themselves.
That last video, the one from Snowbird, there's a shot that looks like it's above my head. And that's what it is. It's that thing stuck on my helmet. It's amazing.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I will let you know. It will be sometime in March when I get to come down to your neck of the woods.
And, definitely look me up. It would be super fun.
You know what? Even if we don't get to ski, we can have a beer or something together.
Yeah, but hopefully we get to ski.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, thanks again, Marion, for taking the time. And can you remind people where they can find you on social media?
You bet. So on Instagram, Mad Motion, pretty much everywhere, Mad Motion. I think YouTube, Mad Motion as well. Just one word.
Right on.
MOTION.
Right on.
You get when you've been around for long enough. I got to land the name and keep it. Well, thank you so much. It was really fun, and I'll have to thank Carrie for making the connection. Yeah, well, you know what? I'm starting to run out of connections, so when people make connections, and Carrie's going to love this because this is the 4th episode, including hers, that she's been mentioned on. She's very well connected. Yeah, she's great. I guess so, yeah. Have a great evening, and thanks again, Marion. You too. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye. Well, there you have it, crew. Another episode of the
the Women in Telemark Skiing, hosted here by Skippy. Anyways, thanks very much to Marion Abrams for sitting down and sharing her stories about OG telemark skiing and leather boots and straight skis, and her really cool career that she's had over the years. And I look forward to seeing the inclusive ski touring video that she has. I have seen it already posted on YouTube, so go check that out. Check out her socials and show her the love she deserves. And she definitely showed patience and persistence to get into that backcountry on Mount Washington 25 years after experiencing that terrible crash on the snowcross. Anyways, thanks again for sitting down and listening to this episode. Peace out.